Most spiritual warfare isn't loud, scary, or dramatic. Most of the time, it's quiet, comfortable, easy to justify, and easy to ignore. When people usually think of spiritual warfare, they think of major sin, like Christian leaders falling and failing, emotional attacks on our personal life, like fear, anxiety attacks, or they think of the things they see in the movies, crazy demonic episode, manifestations, someone crawling on the wall. But if this were the main tactic of the devil, it would be easy to resist. And that's why I believe most spiritual warfare is actually subtle. And I want to show you the signs of this warfare, how it could be affecting your life, and how to overcome it. Let's get into the video. And in this video, we're going to go through the 3 ways to identify subtle spiritual warfare in your life. And then we're going to go to the three ways that you can overcome subtle spiritual warfare in your life. If you guys enjoy these type of videos where we go through a topic, we dive into scripture on what it says about this topic, feel free to like, subscribe, and share with someone that needs this message as well. Now let's get into our first point. What subtle spiritual warfare actually looks like. Number 1, and you guys can take notes. I actually encourage notes. It helps people just remember things. But number 1, distraction that feels harmless. And this is a big one because I feel like, especially in Gen Z, the next generation coming up, Gen Alpha, and even millennials, we're so distracted. Like, if you think about it, we always have a phone, endless scrolling, doom scrolling, just, you know, the phrases they say, doom scrolling, rotting, like all this stuff. I actually believe it is one of the ways that Satan distracts us from getting our full calling in our life. Always being filled with social media, movies, TV shows, podcasts, even just something simple as a busy schedule. Not all the time these things are even bad. Like, we might be watching The Chosen. We might be doing these things, but it's more the distraction that feels harmless. And just staying busy, never being present. All these things are just distraction that feel harmless. But in some cases, I believe that the devil actually uses distraction to not let us be used as a vessel for God or be in our full calling for what God wants to do in our life. Think about it like this, okay? And you guys can write this down if you want. The enemy doesn't need you to rebel and turn away from God. Sometimes he just needs you to be distracted and not be going after God. Okay? So I'm going to say that one again. The enemy doesn't need you to rebel and turn away from God. Sometimes he just needs you to be distracted and not be going after God. Okay? I want you guys to let that one sink in. We're going to go into the next point here. Number 2, how to identify subtle spiritual warfare. Comfort that slowly kills urgency. Comfort isn't evil, but it's dangerous when comfort becomes the goal in our life. Okay, so think about it like this. Choosing something that's easy over obedience. Delaying real self-reflection of what are my personal strengths and weaknesses. You could be ignoring them. You could be shoving those things under the rug. Settling for spiritual maintenance instead of growth. The key idea here I'm trying to get at is comfort is one of the most effective tools against God's calling in your life. Think about something like this, okay? I'm going to show you guys a story from the Bible. The Israelites, they were in captivity with Egypt, right? For 400 years. They're literally getting whipped. They're being used to build the Egyptian kingdom. God comes with Moses and he splits the Red Sea. The 10 plagues happen. And he's like, I'm going to give you guys the promised land. And you have to go to the promised land and you'll have a land filled with milk and honey in abundance. And God actually intended it to be an 11-day journey from Egypt all the way to the promised land. But in that 11-day journey, the Israelites, they turned away from God. They got distracted and thought about the comforts of Egypt. It even says in, I believe it was Numbers, they're saying, oh, we miss the cucumbers, we miss the fish, we miss the garlic and the onions of Egypt. And what they're really saying here is they miss the comforts of Egypt. They're in the wilderness. They're living off manna that God is providing. And still they're doubting God, even though they just saw the Red Sea split. They just had manna fed to them while they're in the wilderness. They have a fire by night and a cloud by day guiding them through the wilderness, and they're still doubting God. And I just want to show you this because this is how powerful comfort is, and how you need to be aware of how comfort is going to come against you in your life. Let's go to the next point. Number 3, delayed obedience disguised as wisdom. And this one can hit Christians pretty hard. I hear these phrases all the time, especially in church circles, young adult circles. You'll hear things like, I'm just waiting on God. I just need more spiritual confirmation. I just don't think now is the right season to do something like that. And I want to just reframe it for you a little bit like this. Sometimes waiting on God is faith, but sometimes it's fear that looks like wisdom. Okay, I'm going to say that one again. Sometimes waiting on God is faith, but sometimes it's fear that looks like wisdom. Okay, I want to even show you a story of this in the Bible, of King Saul. If you go through the Samuels in the Bible, 1st and 2nd Samuel, you'll see the story of Saul. He's the first king of Israel, and God tells Samuel to tell Saul, go kill all the Amalekites. They're an evil people, and I want to kill all the Amalekites. And so what does Saul do? He goes, he kills the Amalekites, but he keeps the goats. He keeps the king. Samuel comes to him, and he sees King Agag there, and he sees the goats, and it says he hears the goats making noise outside the tent. And Saul's response to Samuel is, oh yeah, I did what God told me to do, and I kept the goats, and I kept the king as sacrifice to God. He thought he was doing something right. But Samuel says, no, obedience is always better than sacrifice. And essentially, if you go through the story, you'll see that Samuel actually says, God is not with you anymore. And you can go through and see that after that moment, Saul, he's tormented by demons. His kingdom is taken from him, and he eventually dies. And he's tormented essentially the rest of his life. I just wanted to show you that because Saul thought he was doing the right thing, and he was obeying in part, but he also was disobeying in part because he didn't fully obey what God had told him to do. And as we're just looking at these 3 things, the first point being distraction that feels harmless, comfort that slowly kills urgency, and delayed obedience disguised as wisdom. A lot of these things, they don't really trigger alarms in your life. They don't look like big sin. They don't feel sinful in the moment, and they just feel like a normal part of our life and our generation. And I just want to tell you guys, if the enemy had attacked you head on, you would for sure resist. You'd be like, oh, this is evil. I don't want to be a part of this. It's all the scary looking stuff like the cults and the witchcraft and all the spiritual warfare stuff that you see online. And it looks creepy and scary and definitely looks demonic. But these 3 things, the subtle spiritual warfare, the small little whisper, the small little doubts, and the thing that the devil uses to distract us as Christians, this is how he erodes you slowly and moves you further away from God. Now that we know these 3 things and how to identify the subtle spiritual warfares in our life, I want to give you 3 keys on how to fight back. And I'm going to keep this super practical. This is where I actually encourage the most notes because there's a little bit of self-reflection and things you need to write down. But here we go. Let's first go into the first key on how to fight back against subtle spiritual warfare. Number 1, what is distracting me on a daily basis? Write it down. It could be your phone. It could be friendships that maybe you're spending too much time with. It could be simple thing like just listening to too many podcasts or video games, or maybe it's your work. Maybe you're working too much and you're overcome by working and making money and all this stuff. Write those things down. Think about through your day. What are the things that I'm doing? And you can even look at your screen time. What apps am I spending time on? And write those things down. What is distracting me on a daily basis? Okay. Number 2, what areas of life do I need growth in? And this one, sometimes a lot of people have resistance in, or they just kind of put up a wall in this area. What are the things that I really need to grow in? Me, for example, it was procrastination. And whenever I needed to do something, I would always push it off. I'd be like, oh, I can do that later. I can do it quick. And I would push it off. And so then I had to look at myself and be like, okay, what what can I do in my life to get rid of procrastination? What things can I do to really go after this and become successful and be a person of efficiency, be a person that does the things that says they're going to do? And that's just one example, and you guys need to do that for yourself. And then this one's just a small tip. Find a mentor, someone who's more mature in their walk, more mature in their faith. They're a little bit ahead of you in the next stage of life, or they're way ahead of you in the next stage of life, and ask them to mentor you, ask them to walk with you. I believe that having a mentor is super important because they see things that you don't see in your life, and they've already done what you have done. And so they kind of give you the shortcuts to growth, honestly. And I believe mentors can be super powerful. So that was the self-awareness section. Okay, so that's number one. How do you fight back against subtle spiritual warfare? Aggressive self-awareness. And those were just some of the things I want you guys to go through. Number two, and this one's pretty simple, immediate obedience. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. And I actually want to share a story with this one. 4 or 5 years ago, we had our first child. And I remember I was a new dad, new parent. I'm still figuring things out. I'm figuring out the sleep training and the diaper changing and not much sleep and all this stuff, right? That comes with being a new parent. And we were part of a missions organization at the time. And someone actually came to us 2 months after we had our first baby. And they said, hey, do you guys want to be part of this Bible school and be staff for this Bible school? What comes with it is 3 months of lecture. You're going to be in the classroom every single day with the students. And then after class, you're going to be meeting with them one-on-one and walking with them, teaching them the Bible, answering their questions. And then you're actually going to take a team of them overseas to another country and preach the gospel and do missions work for 2 months. And this whole thing will be 7 months because there's staff training at the beginning before the school actually starts. And I was like, to my wife, I was like, heck no, we're not doing that. Like, we just had a baby. We're still figuring out how to get this guy to sleep through the night. Like, how the heck are we going to lead a school and lead an outreach team overseas? And so I was like, there's no way. And I told them, we'll pray about it. And I was like, but there's no way we're going to do this. And so pretty much we go pray, and immediately we both feel yes, like we should do it. And I was like, what? Like, I literally, like, we like wrote down on a card, like, what we got, and then we shared it with each other. And it was yes. And after I was like, I'm so confused. Like, I have no idea how we're actually going to do this. Plus, we don't have the money to go overseas on this missions trip. And this is what I want you guys to do, is action before clarity. Action before you know the steps to take. Action before you really know what God has in store for that thing. Because I'm more of a logical person. I like to know the why of what we're doing. I like to have a plan before we do it. And so this is something I had to grow in for myself. And if you guys want to know the rest of the story, we got money for the trip within a week, and it was one of the best seasons of our life. And we learned so much on the missions field and made great friendships through the process. And that's just an example of immediate obedience. Structure beats motivation. And this is a huge one. I've even talked about it in some of my other videos. I don't really believe in motivation. Like, sure, you can have a short season of a couple weeks where you're really motivated to do something and you feel so hyped to do it. But also, I believe that system, structure, and routine are one of the most powerful tools, especially as a man, that you can use to have growth, specifically with God, with the Bible, and even just growing in your Christian walk. This was something that I have really learned and dive into in just creating routines, creating structures that help me get deeper in the Word. For example, I have a morning routine where right when I wake up before my kids, so I have time that is undistracted and totally towards God and self-improvement. And so I wake up, I usually do some form of exercise, whether it's the sauna, stretching, maybe something simple as push-ups, and I do that for 20, 30 minutes. Then I usually shower, and then I spend time with God. I spend time in the Word. And that intentionality and setting aside time for something that I care about is one of the most powerful tools you can use, especially as a man. And just being able to be intentional with your day to start the day is super powerful. And just having a structure, a routine, and just making it a part of your identity, even of like, oh, I'm a person who has structure. I'm a person who's disciplined. I'm a person who takes care of myself. And I want to grow deeper in the Word. I want to grow in what He says, and I want to grow in relationship with God. And you're not going to push things off. You're not going to waste time and go through life and living the motions. And I just believe intentionality in this area is super powerful and one of the biggest tools that you guys can use. And just to conclude, I just want to give you guys maybe something you can write down here. Spiritual warfare isn't always about resisting evil. Sometimes it's about resisting the comforts, the distractions, and the delayed disobedience. The battle sometimes is quieter than you think, and that's why it is so dangerous. So that's my video I have today for you guys on fighting subtle spiritual warfare. I hope this blessed you guys. I hope you took notes. And if you guys like this type of content, feel free to like, share, subscribe, and even just share with another friend that you feel like this message they really need to hear it. But yeah, hope this blessed you guys. Have a good rest of your day.